Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. My name is Mr. Dogboat333, and welcome back to Hearts of Iron 4, The New Order, The Ruin as RK Ukraine. In the last video, we started working on consolidating support for the revolution. And we're getting there. We are getting there indeed. Yeah, it's all coming together, I think. Trying to remember. Is it 63 when Hitler dies? I think it's 63, because we start in 62. So we have a little bit of time left before stuff goes down in Germany. Right. Well, they're still working on Heydrich. I forgot Heydrich was the chosen successor. The hammer and sickle of the U-SSR adorn the room. The Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic, not that other USSR. Its edges frayed, the fabric worn, the colors faded. Yet there it hung as if in defiance of the forces that tried to ferociously destroy it. And they had succeeded almost. Andrei Rishitsky needed no reminder of the fascist march across the Soviet Union, of the titanic bloody campaigns across 100 battlefields and thousands of kilometers. They had fought, the Red Army of workers and peasants had fought. Right, yeah, that's all looking back. The peasants had fought, the people had fought, the Union had fought, and they had lost. Today the Germans ruled Ukraine, as they had for 20 years, exploiting the nation's bounty and its people to feed their murderous empire. Nothing more than a colony to be squeezed and manipulated. It would not last. Anatoly was sure of it. There was a limit to what the people could take of oppression and exploitation. Resistance, if often sporadic and ineffectual, had begun during the invasion and hadn't stopped since. They lurked beneath the eyes of the oppressors, biding their time until the right opportunity presented itself. It was his job to coordinate the movement of supplies, to ensure that their partisans possessed enough weapons, munitions, and food to last through another day, another week, and another month. The tenuous lines of supply maintained through sympathizers and smugglers from which food, parts, and bullets flowed were kept open in the face of German crackdowns and pacification operations. One day, the Ukrainian people would rise against the yoke of their fascist oppressors, break the chains of tyranny, and take back the rightful place among their fraternal socialist brethren. All he could do was make sure that they were prepared when that day came. The cause endures. Next, let's blind the monstrosity. Among the casualties and slaughter we endured in the West Russian War was almost all of our presence on the right bank of Ukraine from Kiev and Mykolaiv. We cannot allow the Germans to continue their unopposed campaign of oppression and terror. We must harass the monster at every turn, which means we must bring the fight to the administration's doorstep. Our objectives here are threefold: establishing an armed presence in the area, spreading our message in recruitment campaigns, and collecting intelligence on the enemy's activities. These efforts will be our keys to Kiev once the hour of insurrection is upon us. There we go. Fucking love this song. Break the chains. What is this, a crossover episode? I guess it is. Let's disrupt some infrastructure, distribute some propaganda. Somewhere in Ukraine there was a scrapbook stashed away in some old home in Donetsk. Well loved, judging by the dog-eared pages and straining spine, but gathering dust nonetheless. Within were a handful of grainy photos, commemorating a day of celebration and time of violence and strife. Three brothers were covering the crumbling old walls of a ruined church with a fresh coat of paint to hide their age. The floorboards were rotting from water damage or coming loose, a problem being remedied by a fourth man with a hammer and hope. Were one to look closely, they would have seen the youngest brother's left hand was missing a finger. The eldest brother was missing an eye. The church was much cleaner than the next, though in one of the stained glass windows was a bullet hole not present in the previous image. Carpet covered the dubious flooring, and the fresh paint stood out gloriously. Even in black and white, a one-armed man was using his good limb to escort a young woman down the aisle. They had both bore a resemblance for the three younger brothers. In their curly hair and dimpled smiles, a baby young man and a stoic priest awaited them. Hello, Sherman V1. Nice to see ya. Nice to meet ya? Yeah, first time chat. Nice to meet ya. How you doing? The next was in another room where champagne flowed and gathered. Guests wore significantly dumber grins than before, with ties loosened and collars unbuttoned as they danced. Most had someone on their arm, save for an older woman awkwardly tucked into the corner, a ring on her finger. The next photos were of the same. A happy scene of joyful gas with something distractingly off. A shattered glass, not just picked up. War wounds on every other person, or bloodstains that just wouldn't come out on suits and dresses. The penultimate photo was almost exactly the same, only the bride had planted her foot through the rotting floorboard. Just looking at the photo, one can imagine the shocked silence before they all turned to the next page to see the entire room laughing, bride and all. Where were they now? Can I tell from a spoon? Is this peak life, or is everything going downhill from here? I think that's peak life, man. That is peak life right there. Nazi Ukraine, only for now. Only for now. Luciano. Doing good, just publish a HoI format. Interesting. That is cool. What is the mod? Okay, let's see if we can't deck the occupiers. There we go. Equestrian War, the new German order. What? That sounds kind of silly, but I'm kind of here for it. Vyslavlod Hoblunitsky opened the manila folder, delivered by a dirt-covered partisan who looked far too young. He looked through its contents with a trained eye. He stood at the nexus of an intelligence network that stretched across western Ukraine. Informants collected information from Germans on leave and those with lips loosened by alcohol or companionship, noted troop movements, weapon, vehicles, and bases. He looked back at his desk, examining the map of Ukraine which sprawled over it. It had been with him for years, constantly being updated with positions of Germans and Ukrainians alike, and of something extra. Markers of damaged railroads, broken dams, destroyed hospitals and schools. Neither the war nor the Germans have been kind to Ukraine. He had a plan for that, drafts of an economic reconstruction to rebuild his country, a glimpse at a future that might not come, one that he might not live to see. It was a sobering thought, but it was a future. He set about drafting the new orders, allocating food and munitions. There would be time for the future later. The present comes first. It's a really good sub mod that people recommend. Interesting. I might have to check it out. I actually haven't played Equestrian War at all. Like, not even off screen to try it out. I mean, it's kind of silly enough that I kind of want to check it out eventually, but I just haven't gotten to it. Philip gritted his teeth as the gunfire raged around him. He didn't dare risk peeking his head out as he was pinned down by the sustained gunfire from the Germans. Everything was going wrong, and they were on the verge of being surrounded. Worse, he was cut off from his battle group, most of whom were on the truck, behind the truck they'd arrived on, or on the other side of the street. None of them could communicate with each other, not unless they regrouped, and to do so right now would be suicide. They needed covering fire, but they had no one coming. Something had to be done, and if no one acted, they'd be killed for sure. He took a deep breath, clutching his rifle tightly. It might well be him. He sprang up after one volley finished, aimed his rifle in the general direction of the Germans, and opened fire, while dashing towards a nearby ally. The German response was immediate, even as they were forced to take cover. In this empty alley, he leaned across the wall, panting as he felt something wet and warm running down his arm. He put his fingers to it and was surprised when it came back red. Fuck. He risked firing a few suppressive bursts from his position to keep the Germans away while he pulled out his bandages before the wound worsened. He was wounded, but his position was better now. More gunfire sounded, and he realized it was coming from the other side of the street. Philip smiled wildly as he saw the other half of his battle group pushing forward even without him. He had quickly addressed his suppressive fire to the mix, and it was now the Germans who were on the defensive. It was a bad start, but it seemed they'd turn around. If they're making progress here, he could only imagine how the rest of the uprising across the east must be going. Things went well. This was the beginning of the end for the Reich. Well, let's get working on our eastern fortress. Hugsdorf. Over here is Hugsdorf, right? During the West Russian War, as Yegorov and Tukhachevsky's troops surged over the A line, we launched our own offensive. Much like theirs, we nearly succeeded toppling the Nazi monstrosity, but meant failure. Thousands of brave, strong young men and thousands of innocent civilians would meet their end at the cruel hands of the Wehrmacht and the SS. And we were driven from our previous strongholds in central and western Ukraine. It was only the quick thinking of Shumsky and Korneichuk that would save us from annihilation, a general retreat to defensible areas in the Donbass and Kharkiv regions, which currently stand as our main operating areas within the RK, without which we would soon wither. However, not all is well. Even excluding the Nazi presence, our strong Ukrainianization policies continued under insurgency have generated no small resentment among the Russian minority, swollen by the inclusion of various Russian lands within the RK's territories. It is necessary to eradicate this potential fifth column before it spirals into catastrophe. The party just disagrees on how. How the turns have tabled, am I right? In the front room of an innocent village hut, Maxim Sirikovic Kornichuk sipped a cup of disgusting coffee and read the letter in front of him. The letter was from Shumsky, though the only way to know that was a tiny ink blot in the corner of the envelope, only visible to a trained eye. Secrecy, of course, was paramount. One intercepted communication could strangle the U-SSR in its cradle. Patience necessary. Move no more than necessary. You will know when it is time. Maxim chewed his lip and set down the cup. Brief as always from Shumsky, one of the many skills you learn while operating a partisan movement for decades. Plan was solid too. Lay low, conserve strength, make only just enough attacks for the garrison not to suspect anything. Then, when the time was right, Shumsky would give a signal, and the cells would rise at once. But for now, Maxim needed to make sure the letter got to the next cell. Careful not to disturb the all-important ink blot, he knocked on the front door of a hut and slid the letter underneath it. Finishing off the vile ersatz coffee, he slipped out the back door of the hut and vanished into the night. Discipline and discretion. Getting a nice amount of control over here. We might, with our timing, we might even manage to secure Kiev along with this. Well, all the focuses we got. I think I want to get working on this. I've just aren't playing the OG Lego Star Wars games. It's on Xbox Store for dirt cheap, so I bought it for nostalgia. To be honest, it was actually such a good game even now. Good to know. I remember liking the Lego games. I played the first Lego Batman. I had a lot of fun with that. Anyway, why it should be made a general? Propaganda value, almost certainly, Lyudmila Pavlichenko thought bitterly. We're fellow revolutionaries and needed a beacon, a mascot that would sustain their morale. They needed someone more inspiring than the obscure bureaucrats and decaying partisans that kept the movement functioning. Well, she'd proven herself an effective killer, perhaps the most effective butcher of Nazis since Stalin or Bukharin walked the earth. She had no pretensions, possessing any innate ability to lead, which is why she pushed herself to try harder than any of her comrades. "Move!" she screamed as would-be soldiers pushed their way through the trees and foliage of Ukrainian wilderness. Was the general meant to oversee training this way? She didn't know, but she wasn't about to find out. She had failed her duties. Later, she stiffly pointed her injured arm to a series of boards marked with a spray-painted X. Fire! There was a series of percussive explosions that the boards splintered, and smoke filled the air. Though she would not admit to anyone, the sight of her recruits doing so filled her with a sense of pride. They all made her hopeful that she still had something to offer the world, after all, that she could be more than just a sniper. Even if she lacked the training and privilege and credentials of others, perhaps she could prove herself to be a leader. There might be a life for her beyond these daily battles. For now, though, she pushed the thought from her head. There was much work to be done. She would ensure they made history at the gates of Kiev. A little stronger every day. We'll get 15 forts in Hugsdorf once this all starts, which will be very useful. Alright, and then infrastructure, distribute propaganda. Got our Eastern Fortress. The door to the cottage opened with a painful squeak. First Secretary Ritsky requested the hinge be replaced, but Chairman Shumsky had vetoed the suggestions. The screech would warn them of any unexpected guests. Standing above a wooden table, the old farmer stirred a bowl of porridge. He looked up at Shumsky with a kind smile and poured 2 metal mugs. I do not wish to speak out of turn, Chairman, but even the party leadership needs to eat every once in a while, the old man said in a deep Russian accent. Shumsky nodded gratefully and took the 2 mugs down to the cellar. Ritsky sat in the corner, candle illuminating the numerous documents placed in front of him. Shumsky placed the borscht next to another cold, half-finished mug and joined his comrade on the dusty floor. Does it ever concern you, First Secretary, that the soldiers of the Ukrainian Revolution can hardly speak the language? Shumsky said, watery borscht dribbling down from his mustache. I try not to concern myself with such matters, Chairman. We're all still workers, and we can understand each other well enough. Ritsky responded, his eyes not leaving the paper. And yet, we cannot deny that our current struggle is one of both class and nationality. When victory is achieved, we will have a state to call home, while the Russians have only a wasteland. It seems to me that they should be brought into the fold, taught the language, and welcomed with open arms. As was done in the 30s, it's a nice thought, but people rarely shed their culture so easily. It may very well be more trouble than it's worth. Shumsky thought about this for a moment. Your logic is sound, comrade. Let the Russians speak whatever tongue they wish. I think this will give us more control and less control, but more manpower. And I think we need... It's better to have more manpower just in case. Especially because we barely have enough as is. For years, decades, we've resisted making accords with our nation's Russian-speaking population, but we can no longer continue to do so. We must have more support, more manpower, and more areas over which to operate, and the only way to gain all of these is compromise with a ration. Rayons. Many of our old comrades, including Kivlovi, Shumak, and more can and will decry this as a betrayal of true Ukrainian socialism, but they must be made to understand it is critical and a necessary measure, at least for now. Well, as long as we all agree that the revolution needs to be defended, what does it matter from there? I'm going to leave it there, my friends, but thank you so much for watching. Like this video if you like, dislike if you didn't, leave any comments or feedback down in the comment section below. I read all the comments I get, and I appreciate any feedback you might have for me. Check out my various links down in the description box below. My speech is slurring. I've been speaking for too much, for too long. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. My name is Mr. Dogbout333. I thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.